You spent 3 years building an instrument no one has ever seen. Glass, ground by hand, curved just right to bend light. The moment you finish it, armed men come to your door. Not for theft, not for murder, for understanding light too well. This actually happened in Oxford in 1244 to a Franciscan friar named Roger Bacon, and his own religious order eventually locked his writings away so no one else could read them, afraid of exactly what he might figure out next. So sit with that for a second. What happens to you when you understand the world faster than the world is ready to let you? Here's the truth nobody tells you about medieval wizards. You weren't a robed man waving a staff. You were a healer or an astrologer or an alchemist, and your magic was really just an early, clumsy version of science, dressed in the only language people had for the unexplainable. If you'd been born with a sharp mind in the year 1300, this is the life you might have lived. And it's stranger and more dangerous than anything Hollywood ever gave you. Start at the bottom, in a village. You're not a doctor, there are barely any doctors. You're a wise woman or a cunning man, and you know which herbs stop a fever and which ones stop a heart. English court records from this period show thousands of cases involving people exactly like you, most of them never touched by accusations of witchcraft at all. Your neighbors trust you more than they trust anyone with a university degree, and honestly, that trust is earned. Willow bark for pain, foxglove, carefully, for the heart. You've learned all of it by watching, by failing, by burying the patients whose fevers didn't break, and remembering exactly what you tried the night before. You don't know why any of it works, you just know that it does. That's not magic, that's observation without theory, which is exactly what science looks like before it has a name. And now, the first shock. The line between your knowledge and a death sentence was never drawn by ignorance, it was drawn by power. The same herbal skill that makes you beloved in your village in 1250 could get you burned in 1550, not because the knowledge changed, but because who was allowed to hold it changed. Wait, that can't be right, you might think, but it's documented. As male-dominated medical guilds formed and fought to control who could practice, your exact skills got quietly reframed as dangerous. Your real enemy was never ignorance, it was competition. You could rise higher than the village, too. Imagine you're someone like Hildegard of Bingen, the abbess who, in the 12th century, catalogued hundreds of plants and their medicinal uses in a text called Physica. You run your own monastery, answering to almost no one but God and your own careful observation. You describe treatments still recognized by herbalists today. You aren't guessing. You're building something close to a database, one plant at a time, centuries before anyone has a word for clinical trial. Sit with that for a moment. The record-keeping instinct that runs modern medicine didn't arrive with microscopes. It arrived with patient, obsessive people who happened to be born in the wrong century for anyone to take them seriously. Climb higher still and you become an astrologer, and this is where it gets genuinely wild. Astrology isn't a sideshow in your world. It's mainstream science, taught at universities like Bologna and Paris right alongside medicine, because doctors believe the position of the stars affects your body's four humors, the fluids they think control your health. Kings schedule battles around planetary alignments. Popes consult people like you before major decisions. You aren't a fringe mystic, you're essential infrastructure. You are, in a very real sense, the risk analyst of your century. And your training isn't casual. You spend years on geometry and mathematics before anyone lets you near a birth chart, because casting one properly takes real calculation, tracking planetary tables passed down and argued over for generations, corrected by scholars you'll never meet. Wait, astrology? Rigorous? That can't be right, you might think again. But the math underneath it is genuine, even when the conclusions drawn from that math are not. The tragedy of your craft isn't that it's lazy, it's that it's disciplined in service of a theory that happens to be false. That's a very different kind of wrong than most people assume. Then there's alchemy, and this is where the word wizard earns its full weight. You spend years chasing something called the quintessence, a substance you believe could cure any disease and even stretch a life far past its natural end. You never find it. But while you're looking, you invent distillation techniques still used in chemistry and perfumery today. You discover acids. You map, badly but earnestly, the behavior of matter. Here's the twist buried inside your failure. Your search for magic accidentally builds the foundation of modern chemistry. You were never wrong that transformation was possible. You were just looking for it in the wrong material. The transformation was happening in your method, not your metal. Picture yourself there now. It's a damp evening in a stone tower near Avignon, sometime in the 1350s. You're a friar named John of Rupasisa, and you lean over a clay furnace, sleeves rolled, eyes stinging from fumes. You've been awake for 2 days. On the table beside you sits a battered copy of the Picatrix, a real medieval manuscript packed with astrological timing charts and alchemical formulas, translated and passed hand to hand across cultures for centuries. You check it, adjust a valve, and watch a thin stream of clear liquid drip into a glass vessel. You have no idea you're 3 centuries away from anything resembling real chemistry. You just know the liquid smells different tonight. You write that down. That's it. That's the whole moment. No robes, no incantations, just a tired man with a notebook, chasing a mystery with the only tools he has. Here's the twist that changes how you should see this whole story. You want to believe there's a clean line between the age of magic and the age of science, as if one morning everyone woke up and stopped believing in wizards and started believing in chemists. That line never existed, and it never will. Isaac Newton, the man who gave you gravity and calculus, spent more time on alchemy than on physics, and kept it quiet because even in the 1600s it looked embarrassing. The wizard and the scientist were never opposites. They were the same person, at different points in the same unfinished argument with the unknown. So why does any of this matter to you, scrolling through a video at whatever hour it is right now? Because the instinct hasn't gone anywhere. You still label the things you don't understand as either fraud or magic, rarely as science you haven't finished yet. You call something just intuition until a study confirms it, and then you call it data. You dismiss a hunch until it works, and then you call it expertise. Your real skill was never mystical. It was the discipline to notice patterns before anyone built the language to explain them. Think about how you treat the people in your own life who see things early. The friend who worried about a relationship months before it ended. The coworker who flagged a problem nobody else could name yet. You probably didn't call them wise in the moment. You called them dramatic, or difficult, or overthinking it. That's the exact same reflex that got a healer praised in one century and burned in the next. You haven't outgrown the impulse to punish people for noticing things early. You've just gotten better at doing it quietly, with eye rolls instead of trials. And maybe that's the part worth sitting with longest. It was never really about magic, or science, or which century you happened to be born into. It was about whether the people around you could tolerate someone paying closer attention than they were. That hasn't changed. It just changed its costume. So if you had lived as a wizard in the Middle Ages, the honest answer is this. You wouldn't have felt magical at all. You would have felt like someone paying closer attention than everyone around you, in a world that hadn't yet decided whether attention like that should be rewarded or punished. Some days it made you the healer everyone lined up for. Other days, it made you the man they came to arrest. You spend 3 years building something no one has ever seen. And when you finally finish it, they don't call it a discovery, they call it a threat.